Welcome to Culture Conversations, Lessons in Leadership, where we bring together leaders, experts, and change makers to share the real lessons behind leadership, culture, and team success. I'm your host, Denitresse Ferrell, founder and CEO of Culture Refinery, where we help organizations optimize the return on their most critical investment, talent. And today I am thrilled to talk to Kevin Robinson, who is the president and chief technology officer of TechBridge Unlimited. Kevin has spent over 13 years at Microsoft before founding TechBridge, where he leads the technical vision and strategy to empower people, organizations, and communities through technology. He is known for translating advanced AI concepts into real world solutions, bridging deep technical expertise with a clear human purpose, making complex technology usable for real people, and ensuring that innovation translates into measurable, sustainable, real impact. So, Kevin, I want to welcome you to Culture Conversations, Lessons in Leadership. Let's start by hearing a little bit about your journey. How'd you get here? How'd you go from Microsoft to leading TechBridge, and what inspired you to build what you're building today?
Yes, well, thanks first of all for having me, Denitresse. And I started TechBridge. It started out actually as a company named R Triad, which is headquartered in Greensboro, North Carolina. We rebranded because people really couldn't figure out what R Triad does and is. So TechBridge is really about building a bridge between people and the technology, both from the standpoint of consumers and producers. So we help train people to get into tech careers, and we also help people that are in business consume technology. I started out a long, long time ago at IBM. My career there was short, but I've worked for many companies, both large and small. And I've done a lot of technology, both in the support realm as well as building technology, building data centers, lots and lots and lots of I'd like to say I forgot more technology than I actually know. So that's how I got here, particularly because my last few years at Microsoft were spent in cloud. So I sat on the team that launched Office 365. I also was a premier field engineer, senior premier field engineer, and went around the country to some of the largest organizations, helping them get onto the cloud. And every one I visited, I'd get there and I'd ask, well, who's going to be running this? What's going on? And I inevitably I found out that this leadership just did not think of the people. They'd all look at me with blank stares. And so it really inspired me to say, something needs to be done. People need to be retrained in this technology. So that was the impetus for me coming out and starting my own company.
Oh my goodness. We see a problem and we know that we can solve for it, and we take the charge full head on. I love it. So let's stay with that sort of notion around transition and transformation and sort of how we navigate through various pivots of our career. If you look back over your career, your leadership journey, all the way to now founding TechBridge, what would you say was one of the defining leadership lessons that help reshape how you guide teams and clients?
Yeah, so in my belief from the very first time I entered into the technology field is technology is here to serve people. And whenever it's not doing that, whenever it's making it more difficult for people, I'm inclined to really take action. So that's how I got into it. I'm an engineer to the core. So problem solving is what I do. But really, I like to look at, from two perspectives. I come from very humble beginnings, and the technology career has really created a very good economic mobility for me and my family. So from that perspective, I look at my community and say, hey, here's an opportunity to really change your life.
Yeah.
Uh, and then from the other aspect, which is, if technology is supposed to make life easier and so forth, is it, really doing the acid test and finding out, is that working for people? And, I tell people all the time that are interested in getting into the field, I said, listen, this is not for everybody. Some people, and I did a lot of mentoring and a lot of coaching. And that's really where my passion is at, is helping people to adopt technology, or really figure out that maybe technology is not for them, right? So those are the things that really drive me.
Oh, I love to hear it. So, you've been at the forefront of technology for years and years and years, as you mentioned, sort of being at that pioneering stage of the transition into the cloud and things like that. So now you're helping leaders navigate through this next evolution with AI. Under that lens, what's a leadership habit that you feel no longer serves us in the age of AI, and what should possibly replace it?
Yes. So when I was leading the cloud efforts at Microsoft, one of the things that happened, and I think this really defines where we're at now. I was going around as the subject matter expert for North America, and I was going around to engineers trying to get them to help us with cloud. And these folks had very tenured engineers. They've been there for a long time. Well, what I found out was the thing they're not used to, when we go onto a site to help a customer and something just came out and the customer asks you about it, and this is the first time you've heard it mentioned, for them saying, I don't know, let me
Mm,
find out, was almost impossible. So I really adopted working with college hires, quite frankly, and I was doing a lot of mentoring of the college hires, and they were much more flexible in that way because they didn't know anything; they were learning everything. So uh, we went through a pretty significant shift in engineers because these folks were willing to go out with the cloud stuff and say, "I don't know, let me find out for you." And so that was a huge shift. And so the authenticity of saying, I don't know, is really hard in the tech business to crack.
mhm.
And that is a must with AI because we just don't know.
Yeah. And it's a must with AI, but it's just a must in general, right?
It is. It
The
really is.
the world is ever changing, and if we want to have a growth mindset and continue to push forward, there's always going to be things that we don't know. And the real test is, are we willing to go do the work to find out? Do you know where to look? Do you have some direction of where to sort of start the search? Do you have a process that you can rely on when you're navigating ambiguity and uncertainty and all the unknowns? That's the true test of us as leaders, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that process piece is bigger than most people think, right?
Mhm.
We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have some significant processes that we can lean on. We particularly use Agile. But when you start to add the tools in, and these tools are not like any other tools, they're more like adding a human in, especially with
Mhm.
the onset of agentic AI.
Yeah.
So you're actually adding another member to the team. This becomes a little different because, particularly when it comes to issues like trust and
Yeah.
reliability, and all of those things start to creep up. And now you're managing not people, you're managing AI with,
Mhm.
and that dynamic is something different than we've ever seen before.
Tell me a little bit more about sort of what it's like and what it takes for leaders to make that shift from just managing people to managing a process that operates as if it was a person.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that I learned when I was dealing with cloud technology, which was coming at a very rapid pace. Not as rapid as AI, but it was coming at a pace that was faster than our ability to learn.
Mhm.
And so engineers were not able to keep pace with the releases of technology that was coming out. And then we had to go help people as the expert. So what became a factor, one of the things that I really tuned into is how to create collaboration networks to serve. So while I don't know what you do and you don't know what I'm an expert in, we can start to take our positions in different areas, and as long as we collaborate and communicate with each other, I know what area you're good at, you know what area I'm good at. And as the subject matter expert, I was able to coordinate different people so that they could go to the resources that they needed when they needed it. rather than trying to know everything, because no one knows it all. That is absolutely impossible. So now it becomes being an expert in the area that you're expert in, and really knowing how to network to find out how to collaborate with others. And we call that network learning, right? So that's a big thing. And then we got into accelerated learning, like how do you learn then this is what we met. I was talking about micro learning. So
Yeah.
I like to think about it like the Matrix. The gentleman would say, "Hey, Tank, I need to fly a helicopter," and you say, "Download it right now," right? And then the guy knows how to fly a helicopter. So what do I need to know? When I need to know it, and how fast can I apply that knowledge? And that I can't go for a 2 week course for that, right? That model of learning is what collapsed. So yeah, it's kind of where all the juices flow for me, because we're as humans we're trying to operate in an environment that operates at much faster pace than we're able to learn.
Yeah. And I feel like, Kevin, as you talk about that, I feel like there's also learning that teaches us how to learn that way, right?
Yes.
That mindset shifts that we have to start to adapt and adopt in order to get the most out of accelerated learning. When can you lean on that versus when do you need time to go deep, and how do you find the time to go deep in front of when you might need a fast response? How do you sort of build that up front so that when you do need to run fast, you've conditioned to be able to do so?
Yes. So I love that you brought that up, because it's actually counterintuitive, right? To speed up, we have to slow down.
Hmm.
And so I like the way Warren Buffett and Bill Gates had put out a video a little while back that said, busy is the new stupid, right? Like you can't just
Mm.
stay 100% busy all the time. You need time to actually digest what you're learning and experiment and explore. And, so these are some of the things that the network learning allows you to do, because we distribute it to many, many people. And it's not all on me to learn everything.
Hmm. Hmm.
So now I can take the time to take those in between breaks, and time to read, and time to think about things, and time to experiment. Uh, so we created a process. We call it access, AKSES, right? So it's awareness, knowledge, skills, experience, and then create a specimen. So we try to do that within 7 days to help people get little pieces of learning. And we have a free learn AI, what AI is and what AI isn't, in that 7 days, using those principles. And so really what we're trying to build in the human, right? Because it's all about the human. This isn't about the technology. Everybody's trying AI, AI, AI. This is about you. This is about you and how you're able to use AI to your benefit. And so we really talk about the human, and the human benefits what we call the 5 C's. So you get competence and confidence by learning. Once you learn it, then you have to have the connectivity, and that's that network learning and building social capital, allowing yourself to be in the presence of other people that need that knowledge so you can demonstrate your value. And by that, you end up building your capability and your capacity. And so those 5 C's kind of sum up how we see all learning as it benefits you, the human.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it so much. And we talked about the both of these frameworks and processes that you all have. They're so powerful. Now, I want to shift just a little bit. In your experience, what separates the technically competent leaders from the transformational ones?
That's a great question. Um, so, and I think it's about priority.
Hmm. Hmm.
So great transformational leaders are able to see the people, their talents, and align them with the actual goals,
Hmm.
and be able to get everybody enrolled together as a unit to move towards those goals. Technical leaders often talk at you, and they intimidate a lot of people, because everybody feels like I'm lesser than this person
Mhm.
because they're so technically adept. And so I realized in talking to my team, I've got a vast background in technology. And so I ask more questions than I make
Mhm.
statements so that everybody's involved, everybody's
Yeah.
enrolled, and they're all contributing. And so if you don't get that value set that everybody's a contributor, it's really hard to lead transformational teams.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this so much. It's one of the things that you mentioned, right, is this you have to know the people and their talents in order to sort of put the puzzles together and move them in the way. And we often talk about our inside out leadership model where I think a lot of times we skip a really important step. So we all know you have to start with sort of self-awareness. You got to lead yourself. But oftentimes then we go straight to the team. And before you can go to the team, you've got to know the individual. That's you have to build actual relationship with individuals, with people. I have to know Kevin for Kevin so that I know how to use Kevin at his best. I know how to read Kevin when he's having a great day, when he's having a challenging day. But I need to know those things before I think about how Kevin shows up in the context of the broader team and before we figure out how me, Kevin, and the team have an impact in the broader organization. So I love this really keen focus on people and knowing the people. You can't do much without them. We're not sort of just cogs in the system, right? We're all
Not at
individual.
all. Yeah. So you're spot on. And I love that inside out because who you are and you bringing you to the equation is the greatest contribution that you have, right? That
Hmm.
and so if you don't understand that or you don't even feel that, and that's where the confidence piece comes in. And dealing with a lot of underrepresented folks in technology over the years and doing a lot of coaching, solving for that create such a transformation in their results and their outcomes, right? Because they need to bring their whole self. And if they
Hmm.
can't bring their whole self or they feel restricted from bringing their whole self, the results are just not there. And so I had to learn this, when I joined in the organizations that I joined, many times I was the only African American in the room. And so that whole imposter syndrome thing we go through, and
Hmm.
are we
Hmm.
worthy to be here and all of that stuff. I had to barrel through a lot of that. And thank God I had people that poured into me as well, many of them that did not look like me, but encouraged me that I had a right to be there and that I had valuable contributions to make by being there. So I took that away as something that was so essential to my success that I always focus on that first. Like there's so many things when we enter into those rooms we don't see or know about ourselves that others see.
Hmm.
And getting that feedback is critical to you being confident and also being curious and inspired enough to go get more competent.
Hmm.
So the work harder thing works only if I'm interested. If I'm
Yeah.
not interested, I'm probably not working harder. But if you create a curiosity in me to go become more competent, then I'm going to work harder. I'm going to put in the extra effort.
Yeah, it all comes to, we often say our tagline is cultivate culture, unleash genius. And that's exactly what you just explained. What are the conditions that allow everyone to feel motivated and confident and safe enough to show up fully? Because when that happens, they can tap into more of their brilliance. They can gain confidence, gain competence, and that then translates to greater impact. And we probably talked about this before. I really feel strongly that not even just organizations are sort of missing out, but I think as individuals, we're so accustomed to conforming and holding back that we don't even realize how much of our creativity and our capacity for innovation and our brilliance we're not working in, we are leaving behind. And once we get that, I just think through, the quantum leaps that we're making in technology with AI, and now we're talking about quantum computing is coming here fast. I think there are still quantum leaps in terms of human brilliance being unlocked and unleashed, as well as we really start to honor the power, the value of creating that type of safety, that type of environment where everything and everyone is welcome and can thrive as their best selves.
Yes, I could not agree more. So we're working from a framework called OpenEXO to build the company. And in that framework, they talk about defining your massive transformative purpose. And
Mm,
so spent some time really examining what are we trying to do. And so our massive transformative purpose, or MTP, is that we're looking to empower people to thrive in a digitally transformed world, leveraging the infinite resource of creativity. So you
yeah.
think about what resource do you need to bring to be successful, uh, and I just happened to grow up just outside the Bronx in the '70s and saw the birth of hip hop, right? And it was really a result of them closing down the music programs in New York. So we used to have bands, and
Hmm.
we had brilliant bands, and most of the black community was heavy into bands, and all of a sudden that wasn't there. So we had uptick in gang violence and a lot of real serious problems. For any of your listeners, go to research Zulu Nation and Africa Bambaataa, and you can see what happened. They talked about knowledge of self and really getting into understanding who we are as people and
Hmm.
coming together. And that was the birth of hip hop. That's where
Yeah.
that happened.
Yeah.
That's when the block party started happening. That's when people really started to come together from different communities, because different communities were killing each other before that. If you went 4 blocks to the east or west, you might get stabbed or shot. And so this was a phenomenon that I was present for. So I kind of know what was happening there in the research of how do we make better choices as people. We have
Hmm.
to have community. And that's
Hmm.
where we're at now. We're so isolated from each other. We're having social networks. They call them social networks, but they're very antisocial.
Yeah.
Keeps you be able to shoot these anonymous comments and just things that are unnatural to human beings. And I think when we're in spaces, and we're together, we're able to come up with better. I call it synergy, right? That to me, the
Hmm.
word synergy just has such an effect that none of us could bring that together without us all being together, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. I love it. It's one of those things where I say, when it comes to teams, especially when we're talking about collaboration, we don't use we a lot of times we're using collaboration too often, but when we really need collaboration is when we need the sum of all of the parts to actually be greater than the whole, that we want to expand it exponentially more than if we pieced it together and added it all up. When we come together, now we have more exponential impact. And now that whole is even bigger than it would have been piecemeal. It's powerful, like this concept of culture, of community, of when we have aligned on shared goals, shared purpose, shared meaning, right? Shared friction, shared conflict, that
Yeah.
then comes together to create and shift a culture that unleashes yet again this different level of brilliance, this different level of output and innovation and creativity. It creates the transformation, right? The transformation to not just music, if we're talking about hip hop, because hip hop changed American global culture. Hip hop changed global culture, not just music, from everything from the way we dress, the language that we use. Every single thing it has managed to touch, and what it was born from is such a powerful story. Thank you for bringing that in.
Yeah.
Now, we know that transformation is not easy. It takes time. And you alluded to this before, actually said it very clearly. You didn't allude that, technology often moves faster. than we can. It moves faster than how fast we can learn. It's faster than our expectations of people and of culture. And so when you're thinking about how you help leaders and organizations, how do you help them embrace what you call the seed time versus the harvest mindset and trusting that process instead of chasing those instant outcomes?
Yes, I think that's a personal quality around patience
Mm-hmm.
and understanding that you brought up cultivating. So if we think about cultivating, you cannot make a flower grow.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
You have to, tend the soil, make sure it gets sunlight, make sure it gets water, but you can't make it grow. And that seed time, harvest time, that's what it is. It is describing that no matter how much you want to, you can't put a orange seed in the ground today and go pick oranges tomorrow. And so, how bad do you want oranges? You want it bad enough to wait and reset your expectation?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because the oranges aren't going to grow any faster just because you demand it. So that's called maturity. And so when we think about organizations, are they AI mature?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, a lot of people's bonuses are riding on hitting these deadlines and all transforming these companies, and rightly so, they're pushing very hard to get there. But I think with that said, you also have to temper that with understanding that it's not just the technology. So, quite frankly, the reason I was visiting a lot of the companies I was visiting when I was with Microsoft is because their AI, I mean, their cloud efforts were stalling.
Mm-hmm.
And it was stalling because people didn't know about their future. And that is the case now in a much larger sense. What is my future here? I'm inclined not to work all that hard if I know I'm not going to be here as a result of that work. We're humans. That's you don't have to be AI to figure that out. But our leaders are many times looking at different factors and not factoring that in. And so we have to come with authenticity. We have to come with imagination because the imagination tells you, well, what is the future of the folks that you're talking to? Can we
Mm-hmm.
talk about what that may look like? And this is where that infinite resource of creativity comes from. So, what are you going to do after we do this? What are you going to do when what you do becomes automated by this AI? And this isn't a new problem. I've spent most of my career automating things.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been in many, many environments where this is the conversation, and I'm very transparent about it. What do you think you need to do? Do you want to continue to do this? Because it's going to start moving at a faster pace. There's going to be a lot more demand, right? Is this something, or do you want to do something else?
Yeah.
And that's fair answer. That no, I don't really think I want to stay here. I want to do something else. That's a fair answer. So we have to think through this, and you have to be fair to humans to make their own decisions about what it is. And many times, leadership, unfortunately, is leading by fear,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
they're creating environments that are steeped with fear. I mean, people are afraid to lose their jobs. Nobody's talking about it. I mean, at one time, one of the companies I was working with, we used to call it mafia hits. You come in the next day and people are just gone. You don't know why they're gone. You don't know where they've gone. There's no talk, and that just creates a horrible environment for trying to be productive.
I love that call in because there's multiple sides to that, right? On the one hand, there is the sometimes it's intentional and perhaps malicious, but on the other hand, especially we talk a lot about sort of the managers in the middle, though those leaders are often of just as afraid and don't know what to say, and again haven't practiced saying the I don't know and I'll tell you what I can as I find out more. That's not, they haven't gotten that vulnerable, that comfortable to be able to tell that to their teams. And a lot of times when we're talking about any sort of transformation, any sort of change initiative that involves humans, the human brain needs certainty. It needs it needs fairness. It needs, right? It needs to know those things. And in the absence of those things, the brain responds the same way that it responds to a physical threat. And so, yes, we back up and we stop and we react and we fight back and we freeze and all of those things because our brains have been triggered to do that. And as leaders, navigating this time of un, the pace of change is unprecedented. The uncertainty is all around us, and it's, there are periods of time where there's uncertainty just at work. This is what's uncertain, but I know what's going on here. At this point, everything is uncertain. And so that, right, is where I believe a lot of what we're talking about around that culture building, around that authenticity and leading through in the human side of things really does come into play and is now even more critical than ever. It's not just ramping up on AI and learning, and it's not just that, right? As you mentioned, it's not just the technology, it's the people side of that.
So we do a lot of emotional check-ins,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a gentleman, Bruce Tuckman, that came up with philosophy around team formation, right? Forming,
Mm-hmm.
storming,
Mm-hmm.
norming, and performing,
Yes.
right? And so when we're working as teams, we're doing check-ins. I talk to my team often about uh, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable and being vocal about what makes you uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
because you cannot deal with what you do not know. And so as a leader, I need to know where you are. And like you say, there's times when I can answer that, and there's times when I just have to tell you I'm as uncertain as you are. But I'm going to be authentic with you and let you know at this point, I'm as uncertain as you are. And if you don't do those check ins with the humans and figure out where they're at and how we're moving, you're going to get blindsided by a lot of stalls
Mm-hmm.
and behavior that you did not account for. The other piece is when you're looking at, you have to take a genuine interest in people's future, including your own. And as a leader, I think that is the most paramount thing, that as a team member, I have to feel confident that you're aware of what risks and what rewards might be in my future. And you
Mm-hmm.
communicate to me that very transparently. And when you cannot do that, you start to lose your value to your team
Mm-hmm.
because they look at you as just, well, the currency is trust. And so if we're not trusting of one another, what can you trust me for? And then, you find the results of that. And again, that culture becomes toxic. So I think what culture beats strategy every day of the week,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have the
Mm-hmm.
right culture, all your strategies, even if the ill-formed ones, will probably do better than the great strategy without considering your culture.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That you covered my next question, which was really going to be around how do we, in this sort of state of rapid change, how are we fostering psychological safety and resilience within our team? And it sounds like, this really intentionality around emotional check-ins and actually caring about people and their future and their interests, being really mindful. Sometimes as leaders, we can be a little selfless in that we are so focused on the task at hand and the team that we don't think any further about our own future and what comes next for us as well. And so making sure that that's still top of mind for us, and we don't lose sight of ourselves as we're caring for others. So, and then I love this comment around currency. Currency is trust, right? The currency is trust right now, and it is hard to build and very very easy to erode. um, Now, you often talk about making complex tech usable for real people. What's the human skill that you would say is maybe most undervalued in this space?
Well, for myself, I call myself the consummate third grader, right? I'm going to look for the least common denominator,
Mm-hmm.
and and so making it uh, palpable for people. I could sit here and talk to you about technology all day, but you said things like fairness. That's what matters to you. At the end of the day, it's not what algorithm I used or how
Mm,
I put the guardrails up, or I could talk about all that stuff ad nauseum. What you're concerned with is, did this do me an injustice?
mhm,
And so it brings up the topic of responsible AI, which I think is being bantied about, but with the haste that people are making to deliver AI solutions, it's not at the forethought, which is one of
mhm,
the things we're doing because it is painful. It is it is really trying. It's definitely an area where you just have to say, I don't know. Let's find out. Let's try this. Let's try that. Let's fail over and over and over and over and over until we get better. And so those areas are the things that people are least willing to deal with coming out of the gate. They're looking for the quick win, the buyback, and of course their bonus at the end of the quarter, right? So that is really where we have to start thinking about, do the incentives incent us in the right way,
mm, mhm,
right? Our behavior is gonna begin to match more or less what we're incented to do. There's some topics out there around AI safety
mhm,
and this pursuit of, this relentless pursuit by many, many people for this sentient AI, which is probably not good for humans.
mhm.
So why are we doing it?
Right.
I mean, how much profit does it take to say that, the race for nuclear weapons and all of that, it became obvious. Doesn't matter how much money you have or how many nukes you have. We got enough to destroy the planet multiple times. It only takes one. So the sense in that is what?
Right.
We as a human race, this is the biggest experiment that involves the entire human race. We have to be accountable in what happens here.
Mhm.
And I don't have the answers, but let's have the dialogue. And so I appreciate you for having me on to have the dialogue. What are we going to do? How are we going? We have plenty of useful use cases for AI as it exists today. No need to go find a sentient AI, right? Let's make it useful to humans.
Mhm.
That's the key. And I think once you go beyond that, you get into an area where it's kind of like the nuclear race thing. It doesn't make rational sense.
Now, Kevin, I just want to back us up just for a second for the listeners and viewers who aren't in the tech space. Explain to us sentient AI.
Yes. So what's happening now is you have a technology. It's called machine learning. So a machine can learn or mimic what learning is in a way that makes it appear almost human. And that's
Mhm.
what we're experiencing now. Generative AI. There are many forms of AI. There's, vision. There's all sorts of things. So what's going on now is we have use cases that are being applied to these. They're called models, and they're just, think of your brain. It's really just a model of your brain,
Mhm.
and it's a way that it thinks and learns. That's it. So when we talk about sentient AI, can can it learn on its own? Like right now, we provided the data that makes it learn, but can it just start to make decisions on its own? It becomes sentient, which means it's aware of itself. It becomes curious and it goes learns whatever it wants to learn.
Mhm.
That's a dangerous proposition.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it comes to conclusions on its own.
Mhm.
And when it starts making decisions, and these things are being made, so take for instance, they're putting different weapons in the field in the Ukraine right now that are robots.
Mhm.
And these robots are allowed to go and make decisions about who and where to kill. So it's one thing when you have a drone and there's a human operator. It's another
Right.
thing to drop a robot and say, go kill something.
Yep.
That's a very different thing. It's making decisions on its own. And so when we get to those levels, that's where it becomes dangerous.
Yes, yes. And we have seen, listen, we've it's been decades since we've seen this play out on the movie screens, and yet and still
Yes.
it's
And
like fire's hot, but I still want to touch it. Yeah. Thank
exactly.
you for backing
Exactly.
that up. I know that we talk to folks, and folks watch this recording that are, outside of the tech space. I just wanted to make sure that the language and the point could land home to them on what you were actually referring to.
My pleasure. I happen to have that as my gift. That's talking to normal people about very technical things, and hopefully
Breaking it down to us like we're in third grade.
hopefully not oversimplifying it, but allowing us to find where we can take action and where we can be vocal, right? The things we
Hmm.
want to believe about AI. And again, I have a free course for people to go out there and start to understand it better where it's at today. But 2 years from now, all bets are off. We don't know where it's going to be.
No idea.
So there's a
Yeah.
lot going on there.
So Kevin, that human thread we keep talking about, it runs through everything that you do as well, right? From mentoring teams to bridging technical and executive worlds to building culture through engineering excellence. I'd love to talk a little bit about leadership development from a more personal angle, right? So, what do you wish someone would have told you before you started managing people for the first time?
Yeah, I think it would have been don't assume they think or act like you at all.
Hmm.
I went in thinking that most people come in thinking and acting and having sharing the same beliefs that I do about work, about how to do work and all of that good stuff. And what you find out is people are very diverse in their thinking and their values.
Hmm.
And so understanding and developing understanding of people and how they come to work and how they show up is critical,
Hmm.
and developing empathy for how people are going through things you have no idea that you've never
Yeah.
been through, right? And so how do you show up? And so I try to make sure that number one, I'm clear in my communications, so that we're not and when I say communications, I mean definitions like you asked me for, that
Hmm.
create the ability to talk about the same thing. Because if I use a word like fairness and we don't agree on what fairness actually is,
Yeah.
we could have a whole conversation and be miscommunicating the entire time.
Yes.
And so that's what I learned first and foremost, is that make sure we're talking about the same thing, and make sure I'm bringing in the desire to understand,
Hmm.
which made me an active listener, right? So if I don't come with the desire to understand what you're trying to communicate to me, there's probably going to be a disconnect somewhere.
Yes, yes. I love this. A lot of times we talk about cultural competency, and we often talk about it as a practice, not sort of a static competency. And it's beyond sort of kind of ethnic and racial and religious lines. It's just in general. We could be twins, and the moment we have an experience that is slightly different, we are different, right? Our That's how our brains have been formed. And so I love this perspective. So behind every investment in technology or learning, we all have this hope that people grow and perform differently because of it. Like that's the root of why we do any of it. And you talk a little bit about this. So how would you say organizations should be or could be measuring the impact of both their learning and their AI investments? Like what signals tell you that the investment is actually driving capability and not just activity?
Yes. So I think it really starts at the beginning of being clear, creating clarity around what are the goals, what are the business justifications, why are we doing this? And if that is not clear, and oftentimes it is not, it's very well documented. I had an article I posted on LinkedIn not too long ago, and it has a lot of references to research and McKinsey and Gartner and others that are going through. This is one of the most prolific problems in what's going on. People are saying they're talking about the technology, they're not talking about the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll say, oh, we got this and it's going to do this and blah, 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 blah. But what's going to happen at the end of that, in terms of the business, in terms of the community, in terms of the people, the stakeholders, that's not always clear. And because of that, they get halfway down the trail and they got a whole long feature list of stuff they're going to create. And nobody really cares about that
Mm-hmm.
necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to align all of that delivery, and this is where agile comes in with market fit, right? Do people actually want and need this delivered?
Yeah.
Uh, if we're clear about that, we can make progress. We're working on a project right now with executive coach, and we're looking at the executive coaching field. And those outcomes are really hard to define. What is it that we're trying to do? Because
Mm-hmm.
again, we're measuring what is success for a human being.
Yep.
And those things vary greatly from one person to another. So that said, each time we start this conversation, and it could be a long conversation, what is the outcome we're trying to do? By the way, you can't measure bias if you can't understand what the outcome you're desiring is, because you don't
Yep.
know if you're off, off space or where you're supposed to be hitting. So these are the things that fold back into responsible AI. How do I measure bias? Because I know the outcome. I know what actually I'm intending to happen. How do I measure fairness, right? All of those things start to come into play when you know what the outcome is. These are conversations that have to span many stakeholders. And that's the difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a tech conversation. There are so many stakeholders that have to be involved in that conversation, and each of them have different outcomes that they're expecting. And
Yep.
so how do you marry those, align that, and then of course create a compelling reason why your team wants to go do that? And that is really what we're talking about leadership in the age of AI to look like. It's more of human sociology and psychology and things of that nature that are going to matter. And I think a level of compassion and empathy and vision that has been unprecedented in leadership since before technology. But
Yeah.
when you go way back, people had to have those things in order to have people, thousands of people to move behind them, right? They didn't have social media and things like that. They actually had to show up and be the inspirational person that would get people motivated to go do things on their behalf.
And it comes back to sort of two of the points that you made earlier. One, it's not about the tech, it's not just the technology, it's about the human on the other side of the technology. And the other thing that came up so far in our conversation was this notion of something you have to slow down to speed up. And the getting clear part. I had a rant not too long ago. I call it a rant, where I just sort of I need to get this out. I had a rant not too long ago that was just all about, we think that the getting clear part isn't an official step. We call it like phase zero, and we discount it. But it's often the hardest part of the work.
Yes.
And it's the most critical part of the work, because if you can get it right, then it drives and gives you guardrails and checkpoints, and right, it gives you some structure. And if you get it wrong, then it's so easy to go off the rails, and you don't even know that you're in the wrong direction, because you weren't clear on the direction you were going to start with. And of course you're spending and wasting money in that regard. Of course we can't quantify the impact and the value and the return on this thing that we did. Of course we're missing deadlines and churning, and of course there's frustration, right? Of course those things happen. And getting clear doesn't completely mitigate those things from happening, but it definitely lessens them.
So I think the most prolific and poignant example of that now is when you look at AI to replace people versus augment people.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so whenever they're moving forward with these replacement strategies, you know, who's not going to be offended by that, right? They talk about, millions and millions of jobs being displaced, and then what? What do I do then? So on my LinkedIn, headline is, "What if there is no job? What's next?"
Hmm. Hmm.
So when I talk about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, those are the kinds of conversations we're talking about. Like, what are we going to do? How are we going to navigate and thrive, not just survive, but thrive in a digitally transformed world? Like, when are we going to talk about that?
So powerful. So, and that brings me to the question that I have next, just before we get ready to close. So, right, we're rethinking. If we're in this state where we have to rethink jobs entirely. How do you see leaders shaping that future? What's their responsibility in ensuring that future still works for people?
Well, I'll tell you, I had a former pastor said, the way to tell if you're leading is look behind you. If nobody's following, you're not a leader.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And so I think we've had a lot of time in this labor construct, several hundred years, in fact, that this is collapsing.
Hmm.
Same thing with the education system that we're using; it's collapsing, right? So children can learn faster on their phone than they can in a classroom. That's a fact. And so we have to recognize these facts. They're uncomfortable, and yes, we have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because frankly, if we don't deal with these topics, they're going to deal with us.
Hmm.
And that you don't want. You want to be ahead of this. You want to think ahead of this. So I would say to leaders nowadays, even in the corporate construct, where you have people working for you in full-time jobs and all of that, is to begin to think that through. Like, you have companies forcing people to come back to work. We've just gone through a whole period. And by the way, I've been in technology for decades. I haven't had a job that I was required to be in the office 100% of the time in 30, 40 years. So what are we talking about? Like, really, are we reinforcing, like, industrial revolution
Hmm.
101? Come on.
Hmm.
This is the problem. This is the problem. We're thinking in the past. We're
Hmm.
acting as if we live in the past, and we have a bright future ahead of us if we can figure it out. So, do we need people in seats for 40 hours a week? If I could do that same thing for you in 2 hours, would you still pay me the same thing? You still got the same value. Are you paying for my time, or are you paying for the value? Let's work through those issues, right? Let's
Hmm.
talk about what that means. And then, by the way, what that means for me is now my 40-hour week, I can get 20, 40 times more money than I used to get. Well, that would be wonderful for me and my family.
Hmm.
And everybody still gets the value. So, what are we talking about?
Yes. Yes. We are in that not in that day and age. It's sort of capitalism at its best, right? We want to the powers that be want to experience the gains of efficiency, of productivity. That's what we push, right? I come from the manufacturing sector, so the company wants to experience the benefits of productivity gains, um, and not necessarily pass that down in a more equitable distribution to the employees, right? You get some profit sharing and some productivity bonuses if you're in sort of in a production environment, but it's not the same, as what it looks like if you were truly being able to sort of share that benefit. I love it. I love it. Okay, before we close, I want to zoom back out, and if you had to leave leaders with just one piece of advice as we are navigating these challenging, fast paced, uncertain times, what would it be?
Yeah, so I think, again, the most important skill is not technical, it's imagination. And I mean imagination in its most fabulous sense, that we have to imagine where, like the scenery I have here, where is our best self? Where are we in our best position to do the most and serve the most people with the greatest value? We really need to then invite our team into that vision. And if we can't do that on a regular basis, if it's just about grinding out the factory bell, ding, 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 we got more widgets to put out, I think you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Kevin, it has been such a joy, as always, an insightful and energizing conversation that we've had. So, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for sharing both the technical and the human sides of what leadership looks like in this new era.
Thank you.
Any final thoughts that you want to leave aside from that last piece of advice before we close out?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for creating this space, because to me, a space to talk about culture and cultivating culture, I think is so important to leaders. They're in a place now where the demands from multiple stakeholders are driving them to places that threaten their own well-being. And this is such an important thing to know and be able to express, speaking truth to power and things like that. Like,
Hmm.
if you want these things to happen, this is the approaches we're going to need to take. And if we're not able to cultivate those cultures, we can't, recreating the culture of the 1800s factory is not going to serve us. It
Mm-mm.
just is, it's futile. And so I think, for people that are leading by fear, they need to tune in and listen to your sage guidance here, and the things you're talking about in terms of cultivation and really helping people be their best selves in the environment that we're working in.
Absolutely. I love it. Thank you so much, Kevin. All right, friends, at Culture Refinery, we believe great leaders aren't born, they're built. And that can only happen through intention, learning, and refining every step of the way. So until next time, keep leading boldly, keep investing in your people, and keep refining your leadership.